Good evening, attendees. Hi, Judith. It's nice to have you with us tonight. If you would, please feel free to sign in the chat. Let us know who you are and where you're from. So nice to have you with us. Our webinar will be starting in about 6 minutes. Hello, Taylor and Christine. Nice to have you with us this evening. Our webinar will be starting in about 4 minutes. Just a reminder that PAMLE does have a very nice set of awards that are open to students, teachers, pre-service teachers, and young teachers who are just starting out in the business. So those awards can be entered for nominations anytime during the year, and they are presented at our annual conference. Hi, Lily, nice to have you with us. Timothy, nice to have you with us. Our next webinar will be May 12th. That's the second Wednesday of May at 7:00 p.m. It's going to be an interesting topic on what have we learned in the last, let's see, that would be about 15 months since COVID-19 dropped in on us. What have we learned and what are we going to keep? And what might we just let continue to go its way? Be an interesting panel discussion. We'll be starting in about 2 minutes. We're so glad to have you with us this evening. We invite you to please register on the chat. Tell us who you are and where you're from, perhaps what you do at a school, and we're glad to have you with us. There will be a book study that will be held during the summer. It will be on our new This We Believe, probably a 4-part series be an excellent book study on this, we believe. So look for more information on that in the near future. Our regular webinars will resume in September, and you'll be able to look for that as soon as you get back on the website in the summer. Find out all the information about our early school year webinars. We'll be starting in 1 minute. Good evening, everyone. My name is Paul Mack, and I'm the Executive Director of the Pennsylvania Association for Middle Level Education. And it's our pleasure to present to you this evening a webinar on teaching and learning in the Encore curriculum. PAMLE, in partnership with Eastern University, is very pleased to have an outstanding panel with us this evening. These Encore teachers and one principal will be able to share with you a little bit about their experiences at their schools on exactly how they are teaching in the Encore curriculum, core subjects, and for core contact. Our guest panelists this evening are Rebecca Sensor, a music teacher from DuBois Area Middle School, Renee DiPietro, she teaches gifted ed, and Sherry Sharp, teaching art from Northley Middle School. Rhonda, the birthday girl, Seymour from art. She's an art teacher at Schuylkill Valley Middle School, along with her principal, Josh Keener. And Quinn Matz, who is a health and physical education teacher at West Hempfield Middle School. We're very pleased to have our guest panelists with us this evening, and we are so pleased that you've been able to join us. And now I turn it over to Gail Heinemeyer.
Thank you, Paul. I want to get a little sense perhaps of who is here this evening. So we'd like you to participate in this little quick poll, one of two ways. You can either use the QR code that you see there, if you've got a QR code on your device, or if you could go to slido.com and look for hashtag U634 and let us know who is here this evening. So let me give you a few moments and let's see what we've got. So okay, so we'll go about 10 more seconds and then we'll close out our poll. All right, so it's nice to see our representation here that we've got a good number of teachers. We certainly do welcome our college and university students who are about to step into those roles. Hopefully you are in the job search right now and are going to land something as we come up. A nice group of administrators, curious as to who the other always is, because we don't know how you define yourselves, but we're happy that you're here. And so that just kind of gives us a sense of who our group is. So we're looking primarily at a group of teachers. What are our goals for this evening? Well, here are several of them. One, we want to make sure that you do understand the importance of the Encore curriculum, whatever you call it in your district, unified and related arts, special subjects, whatever, and why they really are critical in meeting the developmental needs of all students. We hope to give you some examples of how you can do this in a cross-curricular approach. We want to look at what are some of the challenges in doing that. It is not easy to develop and maintain the effective Encore program, but hopefully we can talk a little bit about some of that. We may also be able to share some tips with you about how to do this virtually. And certainly we want to connect the importance of the Encore curriculum to this, we believe, the characteristics of successful middle level schools and the founders of the middle school movement. Just so you know, AMLE, the Association for Middle Level Education, has recently published the 5th edition of the Successful Middle School, This We Believe. And all the work that we do is really grounded in the information that is found in that little booklet. So it's a very worthwhile piece for you to add to your professional library. You can go onto the amle.org website and take a look at what that says and order that. I now want to give you some information from Judy Brugge, who is going to talk a little bit about those founders and the connections that they're making to the Encore group. Judy, all yours.
Thank you, Gail. Welcome, everyone. Here are pictures of some of the founders, the main founders of the middle level movement. Gail mentioned the 5th edition of This We Believe. All of these gentlemen were involved in the original This We Believe, and they did the initial research on why it is middle level education should be a unique form of education for kids because of the diverse interests and so on of the kids. So in this case, I was lucky enough to be Conrad Tepfer's graduate student when the first This We Believe was being written. All of these fine gentlemen have passed away, the last 2 this past year. So one of the reasons we bring this up is because we want to pay tribute to them because of what they did for us and for our kids. In this case, I did some research back on what some of them said about the related arts, the unified arts, Encore, whatever you call them. And I noticed that every single one of them talked about the importance of these related arts to the curriculum of a middle level school. They talked often about meeting the interests and needs and expanding the horizons of middle level kids. Bill Alexander, who's considered the father of the middle school, said the more traditional classification of learning opportunities is that curricular and extracurricular. This designation really gives second-class status to learning opportunities which fall outside the traditional program of studies, and therefore we reject it. He was very strong in his advocacy for exploratory subjects and giving kids more experiences. Conrad Tepfer, in his book co-authored with 2 of his former students, Jim Bean and Sam Alessi, say academic and exploratory experiences may interface through cooperative curriculum planning by teachers. For example, as learners undertake projects in academic courses, they may use skills developed in such programs as art, music, or industrial arts. These kinds of interdisciplinary efforts are purposely developed through careful curriculum planning. So you can see that they were advocates of the interaction between these unified core curriculum subjects and the traditional subjects. They actually thought that they could and should be intertwined. So in This We Believe, they talk about curriculum instruction and assessment, making sure educators are prepared, the curriculum is challenging, always social, emotional, health, wellness included, active, purposeful, and democratic instruction. Conrad Tepfer was really an advocate of that, and ongoing assessments, including student self-assessment to measure learning.
Thank you. And certainly tonight, our focus is on the idea that that curriculum is integrative, so that it's drawing upon all of the disciplines that a child is exposed to in school. And we're going to begin that discussion with 2 folks from Schuylkill Valley Middle School, Josh Kaner, who is the principal, and Rhonda Lee Seymour, who is the art teacher. So let me turn that over then to Josh, and you can begin.
Thank you, Gail. Like I said, I'm the principal of Schuylkill Valley Middle School, and my role in this webinar is just to give you an ever so brief account of, I guess, my philosophy as the administrator in the building and how we view the value of the Encore classes. With what we do with all of our middle school students, 5 through 8, is we make sure that each student has at least 80 minutes of this instruction daily, and we feel it's really important to immerse them into a variety of options to meet the needs of teaching the whole child. In fact, just this year we added a digital citizenship course as an Encore course because we're in a virtual environment, and our students really needed to take a good hard look at what they need to do to be good digital citizens and make good choices in using the internet. Along with that, like was mentioned earlier, we tried to do a lot of collaboration between our core teachers and our Encore teachers. And just to give you one more example of that, our librarian teaches some classes, and she just finished a biography unit with our ELA teachers. And a lot of the emphasis was on teaching the students how to cite sources properly for research papers that they have to do down the line. And me going and observing them, I learned some things that some of our 8th graders are learning at the same time about the value of citations. And it's just the ability to work together as a team. And some people might not always think of why isn't that a standalone activity for the English teachers to do? Well, it worked really well with the librarian bringing her expertise with different content from the library to mold together into a really outstanding unit that I think really benefits the kids. With that being said, I want to turn it over to another one of our teachers who does an outstanding job in our art department with all of our students, grades 5 through 8, and that's Rhonda Seymour. So Rhonda, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Dr. Keener, appreciate it. So I have some tips for our students out there, and maybe just a reminder for why we got into education. Art is a science. So art teachers get their bachelor's of science in art education. It's a process. And I keep reminding myself every time I show students a new technique as oxidation on copper refuse and the liver of sulfur. That's a science. So it's already embedded in the curriculum. Also, I remind myself why I got into teaching, which is because art is an area where I can incorporate all the core subjects. I couldn't decide if I wanted to be a language arts or a science or a history, and this is a place where I can just combine everyone and be myself, really. And then before I get into explaining some of my lessons, I also remind myself of my philosophy, which is discipline-based art education. So you need your art history, your art aesthetics, your art criticism, and finally your art production. And then I couple that with TAB, which is teaching art behaviors, along with the student-centered curriculum. So when the kids come in here in 5th grade, their eyes are wide open and it's more like a scavenger hunt. They just see spontaneous things that they can do. And my job is to help them figure out how they can apply what they're learning in math, what they're learning in language arts in the art room. So also keep in mind that this building a core and Encore curriculum seamlessly doesn't just happen overnight. So I actually had to have buy-in, and I had to sell my art philosophies to the different grade levels. I actually had to go to their 5th grade wing and the 6th grade wing and say, hey, this is what we can do. So I always start the year with a district-wide holiday card contest. And with that, I do earn about $500. And with the $500, then at the end of the year, I do a building-wide arts day. Now, because of COVID, I did have to cancel it for the last 2 years, but my very, very last slide gives you some idea on how I would get other Encore teachers, such as Dr. Yingling, our band director, would actually be in front of 700 students, and he would do a call and response when I had an African arts day. Everybody made a drum simultaneously. I had 2 art teachers where I had to find one, since I'm the only one, I had to find someone to come in. We built the drum, and then at the end of the session, Dr. England came in and did a call and response. So we're still back in 5th grade. So after we do the holiday card contest, then we build all the different ornaments that go on the holiday tree. So I don't know if you can actually see all the slides, and I was told I can put some of my links if you're interested in the chat. So how do you build a pineapple represent? So I would bring a pineapple in, and we would have a science lesson on all the parts of a pineapple, like the crown and the bracts. And then we find out that there are bracts on poinsettias, and we talk about the history. And so when I talk sorry, my voice goes in and out. When I talk to the 5th grade team about how I can incorporate my art and science lessons into their social studies unit, it looks awesome. So again, I don't know if you can actually press the link that says SVMS 5th grade, because that would show you some other speeches that they do. They actually do a reenactment of Williamsburg, colonial Williamsburg. So that's one thing. And then there are other links on there that says the techniques that to build the holiday card. The pickle ornament is a German tradition. So if you look at that holiday tree, you're going to see a poinsettia. That's a sewing lesson, but it's also a history lesson. Then there's the pineapple we talked about. There's the Moravian star. This is another aspect. So if you have a Moravian star and you only have a 40-minute and it usually takes the kids 2 hours, I bring the community in. We'll have work sessions after school, and the parents love to come in and do some art. We can move on to the 6th grade one.
Okay, and just as a reminder, this session will be posted on the website, the PMLA website, so you can go and access that and have access to all of those links right there and download and see that great information that Rhonda's sharing with us.
Thank you. So with the 6th grade, this is another really exciting Encore seamless project that we do. It's called the Tiny House. And it looks better if you actually press the link, because you would see how the language arts has character building. They choose a character that would fit into a tiny house. It's a big movement. We watch it all the time on TV on how people live in a trailer. So the kids are excited about building their own tiny house. In STEAM, they actually make a floor plan. In science, they learn about the environment that their tiny house would be in, and with earthquakes, they do like an earthquake test if their tiny house would live up and stay standing. In math, they have another requirement. I think it's all they do a 2-dimensional floor plan. And for me, I show them in art class how to draw in 1-point linear perspective and 2-point angular perspective. And we also look at Beverly Buchanan, who did vernacular shotgun shacks. So that's another really exciting lesson that we collaborate all together at the end of the year. We can move to the next one. All right, so Outdoor Ed is another special program. And if you saw my slides, you saw that 5th grade has a word called organization. Everything their whole year is built on the word organization. And then 6th grade's word is responsibility. 7th grade word is cooperation, and 8th grade is all about respect. And all Encore teachers get together and we build this outdoor education. Whether they're doing problem solving or building books. And with, like in 6th grade, I do book binding, and I also help them make paper through paper pulp. I give the history and how it started in China. And then they take those journals that they make in their outdoor ed experience for their art aspect, and they write their reflections in these journals. So again, we are just meshing all these teachers all the time, and the kids see how the teachers are working together, and they take ownership in their education because they see how enthusiastic the teachers are. 7th grade, we actually would go to, we used to go to a sleepover camp, which was a lot of fun, but then we moved to just 2 days worth. And again, it's a lot of like boating, canoeing. So there's a lot of phys ed, but they do get can make bracelets. And in 7th grade, I would do the copper repoussé. So I go back to the 5th grade and learn about the aluminum repoussé. And now in 7th grade, we build off of that, and it's a copper repoussé, and we learn oxidation and how like the Statue of Liberty went from patina green because of the rustation, and then liver sulfur turns it to an antiquish. And then 8th grade, it's all about respect. And I believe you can go to the next slide, because that will give some pictures of the disselfink bird at the Berks County Heritage Center. That means good luck. And they make a hex sign, which goes back to the 5th grade. To build off of that, they learned we have a lock house, and they learn a lot of these symbols. And in 8th grade, they incorporate them again to learn more about the history of Berks County and the red clay. And it's all about respect. So they respect themselves, respect their classmates, they respect the materials, and the earth around them. And this picture is showing Earth Day, where they go out and they clean up the local trail. So again, there's a lot of history, there's a lot of science, there's gym, there's exercise. It's just a lot of collaboration. Is that my last slide? Okay. So again, these are hyperlinked. So if you go to the resources, you'd be able to see all of them. Another thing that I do at the very bottom of this slide, it says Latin America. That is what I'm doing this year. And the kids have an online sketchbook, and it takes them to all the different, like Machu Picchu, and they draw that, and Chichen-Itza. So they get a lot of history and geography in their sketchbook, and they learn about the special animals, unique animals to Latin America, like the tapir and the vicuna. So I learn a lot too. I have bins in my art room of 10 years worth. This is my 26th year, and I usually don't repeat one of my lessons, just because I like to stay current. So with France, that's another lesson that incorporates like history. I think it's important that kids know their, like the national flower, which is the rose, and how does that compare to France, which is the lily. And so we do a lot of geography with that. With the Asian Arts Day, just like we did the African drums, Asian Arts Day, they built dragon eyes. And another link on some of the different projects under each of the cultures. I think 7 Seas was a fantastic arts day. Could you imagine 700 kids with a pound worth of clay? And thank you to the administration, because they allow me to do this. Everyone had a piece of canvas, and they're in the gym and the cafeteria, and they actually threw their clay onto canvases, and they made fish feet. And then we got to fire them. So again, it's just a whole lot of collaboration just for kids to get enthusiastic about their education.
Great, thanks, Ron. Those are some terrific ideas, and you see many of the possibilities in being able to link to the other subjects.
Oh, I do have one more slide.
Yep.
We also have an advocacy program, and this was built by the 8th grade team. And I think it's really appropriate to include, especially during COVID, it's a time capsule. So again, if you would like to take a look at that, kids get to reflect. We would have everyone do this at the same time, and then they are building and reflecting, just like in 8th grade, they're studying the Diary of Anne Frank. They are the primary source. And that's why it's really important right now, especially because we're being compromised with our traditions, for them to understand this time period that we're in. So that's another great slide. I totally forgot that I had in there.
Okay, thank you. And we want to continue the idea of integrating the arts. And let me introduce you to Sherry Sharp from Northley Middle School. Sherry, take it away.
Sorry, I had to unmute myself there. I'm Sherry Sharp. I'm the art teacher at Northley Middle School in Pendelco in Delaware County. I've been an art teacher for 27 years. I also have my principalship. And so I've learned a lot from a couple different perspectives about the arts and how they're taught in schools. I'm also the team leader of the art cycle team for 14 years. One of the things that I thought I would start with is a kind of humorous slide, how not to approach arts integration in your school. All too often it's an afterthought. We should be doing something together, but we don't know what. And who hasn't heard the phrase, hopefully most of you have not, but I think at some point in my career, everyone I know has heard, well, we noticed our math and reading scores aren't quite making the AYP goals. So how will you be fixing that in your art class? So it's kind of a heady question to be asking people who signed up in school to be making creative and lofty, beautiful things. So when you first get that question, the question about what it is you're going to be doing in your class to save the scores, originally, I think people are a little bit hesitant, frustrated, not understanding what's going on. There's a little bit of a communications issue there, and it's because there's no fundamental understanding of how arts integration works. Arts integration really is an approach to teaching in which students construct and demonstrate understanding through an art form. Students engage in a creative process which connects an art form and another subject area and meets evolving objectives in both. And that's what's critical here. It isn't one at the service of another. There was a time about 15 years ago when we were asked in our schools that in each class we would have each student do a 10% summary where they would read about the topic that you were teaching and summarize it in a tenth of the size of the article is how big their summary would be. And it was artificial and it read artificially. And what would happen was kids would come into class and go, are we doing the writing thing? If you're answering the question, are we doing the writing thing, and there's groaning, you know that you haven't really authentically incorporated it into what you're doing. It's that authenticity piece that really makes it so useful for kids to see something. It's almost like theater in the round. I'm tripping over my words. You can explore an idea from many different perspectives instead of just a painting on the wall, the history of the painting, how it got there, how the person was trained, words about it, the math that went into it. It's that interconnectivity that makes it seem much more authentic. Next slide, please. Okay, what among the things that arts integration is not? Number one is it is not a way to boost test scores or sell the arts to a community or school board, although those are wonderful side effects of integrated arts. When somebody understands something from more than one perspective, it opens up the opportunity for these things to happen. So naturally, when a child understands a concept three-dimensionally from every different angle, test scores will go up because their understanding isn't fleeting. They didn't learn a fact and discard it. It's part of a whole. Arts integration is not a convenient thing to ask your related arts teachers to go and figure out while you're in-servicing the rest of your staff on their content. Hopefully you've not had this experience. I've taught in several districts, and one of the experiences I most remember from my early years was when they would go, oh, geez, we forgot to have an in-service for arts people. Well, you guys go figure out how you're going to link yourselves to what we do. You know, and it needs to be more mindful and needs to be more intentional. And sometimes that's something that you need to advocate for. So especially for new teachers who are on here, people are considering going into teaching, you may find yourself in a position where you have to advocate for that piece and say, listen, we're part of a bigger whole here, and we need to be considered as part of the whole and not just something separate or extracurricular. Arts integration should not be forced or awkward. Again, if you're getting the question from your kids, why are we doing this? Is this the writing thing? Then it isn't authentic, and you need to think about how you're approaching what it is you're trying to teach. And the last is using one academic discipline in the service of another. That's not what arts integration is. Arts integration doesn't mean the art teacher teaches science, the art teacher teaches math, the art teacher teaches English. It means that all teachers are mindfully teaching all the discrete disciplines in their discipline where it's important. And you don't have to sacrifice the integrity of what it is you do to strengthen the learning connections. So you don't stop teaching art to teach English. You use the same concepts of an ELA or English class in your class. Meaningful arts integration should, in my belief, be research-based, looking at both quantitative and qualitative data, especially when we're talking about something as esoteric as art. It's not always going to be numbers. Sometimes it's going to be a feeling. It's going to be the temperature of your school, and you're going to feel, okay, I think they're having aha moments now. I see the lights going on. I see that people are understanding what's going on here. This is a good lesson. This is solid. I'm using a lot of different influences, and this is really seeming to work for me. Meaningful arts integration should promote formal and informal modes of staff interaction and connection. Time, communal prep time when you can interact, time when it's set up to do that. Once a month, twice a month, whenever it fits into a PLC meeting where you work with people of another discipline. It could be very useful. Informal modes of staff interaction. informal time in the hallway. I can't tell you how many of my lessons this year have sprung from our doors being open for COVID, and my hall duty happens to be next to a really good ELA classroom. So I'm listening to the things the ELA teacher is saying, and I'm making those connections informally. She doesn't even know I'm listening. In fact, I probably should go and tell her tomorrow, but that's another way you can listen. Just keep eyes and ears open. Look for the academic connections and not force agendas. You're not trying to make an art teacher into a math teacher or a reading teacher, and that's so important to understand. What you're trying to do is make an authentic academic connection so that they understand that what you're teaching as a specialist is academic as well. It should also be fluid, natural, authentic, and sensible. Should not feel forced. That's important. It should engage students with varied learning styles and interests. This is a really key aspect. I have several students in my class every year who are art resistant because it's just not their thing. They're science kids, they're math kids, they're athletic kids. They don't know that they're good at art because they have always approached it from that more esoteric way. And so if I teach it using math concepts, or I incorporate ELA concepts that they're already familiar and successful with, it's less of a shock to the system. And also integrating the conventional with the intentional. There's things we've always done, the 3 R's and everything else, but then we want kids to be broader. We want them to have a greater perspective. So we're intentionally integrating the ideas of the things we've done before that have worked and trying the new things and to spread our wings a little bit. Next slide, please. Okay, so here's an example of a lesson that I've developed during COVID. I've always integrated, as Rhonda said, always integrating the different parts of art. There's performance, and that's what kids classically think of as art, making this stuff. Then there's the history, the learning this stuff. And then there's a way to do that and incorporate a little bit of knowledge from other classrooms. This year I've started having this thing called Wednesday. I ought to get that copyrighted because we've even come up with like theme songs. We had a little show about it. My kids have really run with it. They know that every Wednesday when we're at home, and we're at home every Wednesday because that's our at-home day, even now that we're back 4 days on, the fourth day off is Wednesday. Well, Wednesday happens to rhyme with Wednesday, so that just worked out great. So every Wednesday we do something called Wednesday. They only have 15 minutes online, and then they work asynchronously afterwards. And what we do is we compare and contrast 2 pieces of art, and I give them a little background and history on the artists, and then set them free to examine it and using a Venn diagram, because a Venn diagram is something that they've already used in ELA class. So it's a visual way of organizing their thoughts, and this supports how they do it in ELA. But anyway, this is one that we did this year, comparing and contrasting 2 paintings, The Problem We All Live With by Norman Rockwell on the left, and Untitled by Bria Geller from 2019. This was the one on the right was making the rounds this past year as a meme all over the internet. The kids were seeing it and trying to understand what was going on. Comparing and contrasting these 2 paintings was really fun because there's some really obvious things in common, and then there's some subtle differences. There's some historical context here. There's an opportunity to talk a little bit about politics. There's a little bit of opportunity to talk about civil rights. So it brings a lot of these things into play. Next slide, please. So classically, when I look at 2 pieces of artwork with my kids and we have this short little class, we compare and contrast. You have to come up with 5 bullet points, or they call them jot dots, 5 bullet points about each piece of work that are the same, and then 5 things that are different. And that's where the Venn circles overlap. We usually in an art class talk about it in terms of line, shape, color, value, form, texture, the things that the basic building blocks of art. I started to understand though, when I was listening to the ELA teacher teach, that there's a way that I could do this a little more mindfully sometimes when it applies and bring her ideas into the lesson. So I started teaching some of them this next way. If you could go to the next slide, please. So here's how you could do it instead. Instead of doing the jot dots, answering specific questions that are sort of leading and make that connection to the ELA piece. One of the things that I noticed that the ELA teachers were having a hard time teaching was the concept of theme. Theme is a little bit hard for middle schoolers to grasp onto. It's a little bit big of a concept. Plot, they understand what is happening. Characters, who are the people? That they get. Theme is, what is the bigger message the artist trying to tell us? If I ask you what is this painting about, you could say it's about a lady walking down the street, or it's about a girl going to school. But what is the bigger message? What does the artist want you to know when you look at this piece of artwork? And I saw light bulbs going off, and I go, oh, that's theme. Like they were having a really hard time reading The Outsiders and struggling for what's the purpose, like what did S.E. Hinton want us to know? Now it seems like they really fully understand the concept of theme because they've been immersed in it visually, and they go, oh, I see, what is this about? This is about racism. This is about overcoming obstacles. This is about being tough in the face of adversity. Now they're starting to get the bigger picture. So just by bringing in these things that I'm hearing from other classes like ELA and intentionally incorporating them into my work, they're still doing the same thing. They're comparing and contrasting two works of art, but they're using words and vocabulary that they're also already familiar with and just learning to make a richer experience. Next slide, please. So in any case, my philosophy is that it's by integrating the conventional with the intentional that we're helping our students to gain a deeper understanding of the interactive and interdependent world that they not only inhabit, but create through their informed choices. It's very important to me that kids experience as much as they can, as roundly as they can, as dimensionally as they can. And I think that's what real learning is. The surface learning where you get an idea on Tuesday and it's a fact and you lose it on Thursday after the test isn't what breeds a love of learning and isn't what's going to advance our kids in the future. So trying to incorporate these things into what I do has been a real effort this year, and it really seems to be paying off both in my class and in the ELA science and math classes that I've tried to make bridges to.
Great, thank you, Sherry. There's some fabulous ideas that were there. And now, continuing from the Pendelco School District, and which includes Northley Middle School, is our gifted support teacher, Renee DePietro, who has some ideas to share with us. So Renee, take it away.
Thank you, Gail. Hi, I'm Renee DePietro. I've been at Northley for 9 years, and these are just a few other points for my experience in education kind of history. Okay, you can go to the next slide. I'm just going to cover just 4 things kind of quickly, some best practices that have come out of the program that I teach with 6th, 7th, and 8th graders, some cross-curricular units that we do, one tidbit of research that I find really helpful for this year, and just some resource ideas as well. Okay. Before starting with those 4 things, though, especially if you are new to being an Encore teacher, an elective teacher, I think sometimes it can be a little overwhelming taking on either new curriculum or having to come in and improve something. And just advice is just looking at the population of students that you get in front of you and asking yourself just one question: what does this population of students need most? And that could be anything from skills to challenges that they need to experience to content that might be lacking. So when I started this, I saw that STEM exposure, early STEM exposure was something that my students really needed. And the next one. Okay, and then another thing that of course we've heard a lot over the years is just basically career skills, college skills, career skills that students are coming in lacking more frequently now, which is creativity and confidence. So I try and build these things into my units as well for my units, especially connections to current events and current innovations, and just making sure that they leave being able to have really good presentation skills that they can kind of work on in our class and public speaking. When you find that answer to that question, those were kind of my answers to the question that I posed, then make that the cornerstone for everything that you do. And I think that is the way to start, because we do many things. Some teachers typically are teaching the same, maybe 2 different classes all day long, so accelerated or regular ed or honors. We might be teaching 6 different lessons in a day, which then it's good to have a cornerstone to start with. And next slide, thank you. For some just best practices that we found over the years in our kind of program is student-led Fridays is something that has emerged. I used to do a lot of TED Talks on Fridays, and from that, I put the students in front of class instead. They do an excellent job. So every year I teach through November, and then the rest of the Fridays, the students get up and teach. This is a great opportunity for them to have enrichment extensions from things that they want to dig into. This is also a place that's really helpful for them to fill in any holes for things that they are really super interested in, but there hasn't been any connection to it yet. So this is a lesson plan, that's filled out by them, and they have to do at least one a year. They do multiple ones though by the end of the year, and it's something that they really start to kind of gravitate to. Another thing is marking period projects that are not only with our unit, but always an individual one as well. And I pull contests, local contests and national contests. They are so great to use for enrichment in all the different content areas. They're already standard-based contests, and there's so many super ones out there. So every marking period, we have about 10 options that they can do. That includes writing enrichment as well. It's kind of built in there. And then not so much this year, but in the future, we have done a few things virtually, but having guest speakers, I feel like coming into the Encore classes is a no-brainer. Bringing in the people who are working in these, unique professions that we kind of end up talking about and showing a lot in class. It gives mentorship to the kids. And I feel like a beautiful thing with Encore and elective teachers is we have kids often sometimes, for multiple years, we build relationships with them. Having some of those students come back even as alumni and speak to your students about, could be content related or just school related is also a great opportunity. And these are just some photos of things that we got to do this year. The Student-Led Friday that I just talked about, one recent one this month was a student taught us how to write our names in Japanese because she is very passionate about learning Japanese on her own. The bottom left here is a presentation, a unit project that in 7th grade, the students learn how to become president of the United States and they have to run a campaign. So those were our presentations. And then the bottom right here was some of our high school students coming to talk to our 8th grade students about AP classes and talking to them about all the different content areas and why they're taking them and what that planning looks like ahead. Okay. And coming back to that creativity piece, I tried not to, have that go away with COVID this year. So students continue to work on projects. This is scale model projects that my 8th graders do, which is kind of a STEM unit. And we often have galleries at the end of our projects to invite in parents or to invite in teachers just to come in and see their work. So we did that virtually this year. One bit of research that I would love to share that I found just so helpful through RIU was Dr. Michael Bradley. He is an adolescent psychologist, and he does a ton of trainings for teachers and also parents. And he has a few books, and his most recent book is, I wrote down the title here. It is, I'm sorry, it's on my other page here. It's Yes, Your Teen is Crazy, Love Your Kid Without Losing Your Mind. And it has some interesting research in there, but it's all about resilience building. So if you could go to the next slide. I feel like us as Encore teachers and as elective teachers, we have it built in almost with the SEL constantly in our classes. So it's easy to add this in as well. And I feel like this is a huge thing. I've been adding in these Jamboard questions on Fridays just to connect with the kids. And the responses are just so incredible. So this one just says, you are blank years old. So they could be 11, 12, 13 at this point. And in several years, you'll be 18, you'll be an adult. What is a piece of advice you want to tell yourself when you're 18? These often lead to really beautiful kind of discussions as well in class that we can come back to and kind of circle back to too. Okay, next slide. Back to curricular extensions. So the easiest way to kind of start to try and do that, you have to know what everyone else is teaching in the building. I love Sherry's example of, having Judy outside of this awesome ELA teacher. And then that's where some ideas have come in from. When I started in my school, I did not have a classroom for a few years. So that meant I pushed into rooms for 8 different periods a day and was teaching out of people's rooms. So even by going in early or being able to be in other people's rooms and just seeing the work in the room really was a gift in such a way because I got to learn in every grade what every grade was learning. And then we created these units from there. So some examples of extensions that we do or that I've been able to do with the kids. So phone app concepts, innovations, it's kind of a technology unit, but also a problem solving unit. That's an extension. The campaign project, that's a 7th grade social studies unit extension of how to become president of the United States. The May Day Society Flooring Project, again, an extension of 7th grade social studies. Rube Goldberg machine is an extension as well as scale models for 6th and 8th grade for engineering. And then conspiracy theories and career and college preps in 8th grade. And we do like extension mainly with ELA standards there. Okay, and then resources. I know I mentioned this, the contest that we do. From there, we have like a contest corner for the whole school because these contests are open to everyone. So as we started doing them, the more people that know about it, the better. And it's really cool just to have kind of a central spot to go and see them. Another suggestion is just virtual reality trips. The resources out there for that right now are incredible. Just even on YouTube, the 360 videos, you could pick a place that you are going to talk about, take them there. There's going to be a 360 video about it. You can go there for 4 minutes and get out of the classroom still. And it's there are amazing resources out there. And then next slide. And these are just pictures of what the contest corner looks like for the student view. Then there's kind of one that's more for faculty and their parents. Can go to the next slide too. And this the last thing is, I think the kids really come to our classes wanting to have fun. You know, they really do. And as we are doing this, you know, intrinsically with the other stuff, I love making sure that we still are kind of having that fun as well. And this was just a really fun tech prep kind of video snapshot there where we passed a pencil around the Zoom. And I took a screencastify and then played the video back for the kids, and they can see how they passed the pencil around the room. And it's just like a kind of a fun thing to add in there. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Renee. There's some great ideas there that certainly allow you to let students share their voice. And now we're going to move to where they might actually be sharing their voice with some words from Rebecca Sensor, a music teacher at Du Bois Area Middle School. Rebecca?
Hello, thank you for having this forum and for inviting us to speak on topics that we are all obviously so passionate about. It's very exciting. A little bit about me real quick and my school. I'm Rebecca Sensor and I'm in my 20th year of teaching at Du Bois Area Middle School. I teach 5th grade music and 6th through 8th grade chorus, and I have an after school theater program. Our school is 5 through 8 and has 16 exploratory courses throughout the 4 years our students are at the middle school. I have 2 middle school music colleagues in my building, and I'm so lucky to have them. And we can share experiences and bounce ideas off each other. And I think that you don't always have, when you teach an Encore subject at certain grades, you don't always have those colleagues in your building that teach the exact same subject that you do to bounce ideas off of. So I'm very lucky. We do have a band director and then a music teacher who teaches 5th grade chorus and also teaches the music classes that I teach. We actually team teach together on different days of the week. We seem to have a reason to reinvent and rewrite our music curriculum, and as do a lot of our other Encore classes, every few years due to school restructuring or class restructuring. So this is actually something that we are looking at right now. Our 9-week Encore classes are actually becoming full semester classes next year. So we are actually in the middle of rewriting curriculum as I am presenting this. So the first slide of mine shows the cover of the book To Sadako and the Thousand Paper Cranes by Eleanor Kerr. In 5th grade music, we read this book. We listen to traditional Japanese music while reading it. We write haiku poems and write accompanying pentatonic scales for our poems. And we fold origami cranes. And this lesson, it does not currently act strictly as interdisciplinary or cross-curricular, but it does echo and reinforce several important concepts that our students have been learning in their ELA classes, and also touches on history, world cultures, and visual arts. In writing our new curriculum, we have been in contact, though, with our 5th grade team teachers to see how we might make this cross-curricular unit in the future. And we also do some other similar, along with similar lines. We write raps. We use vocabulary to review rhyme scheme and how that relates to rhythm in music. And I just actually sent out an email last week saying, hey, we're rewriting this. What else do we want to do? What else can we do in these semester courses now that we can incorporate some of the things you're doing? You can incorporate some of the things we're doing. Before I move to the next slide, I do want to mention that, just to piggyback on what Sherry talked about, keeping an ear out for what other classes are doing. Every year, our 8th grade memorizes the preamble to the Constitution. And as soon as I hear my 8th grade chorus students talking about that, I grab a ukulele and we go down and we stand in the team area for each 8th grade group. We go back and forth and we sing the Schoolhouse Rock song that is for the preamble and covers the preamble. And they listen to that in class also. So teachers come out in the hall, kids are poking their heads out in the hall, everybody on the team singing the preamble to the Constitution from Schoolhouse Rock. And things like that are just, like you said, authentic and fun. And they just kind of can happen when you're engaged with what else is going on in your building. So the next slide shows an example of some of the graphics we show when we talk about music math. And as some of you mentioned, I always tell my students that music can be an effective tool to teach any and every subject. And music and math really do go hand in hand when you're talking about note durations, especially. So this slide is an example of some of the fraction work that we do in music class. And when I contacted our 5th grade math teachers about the cross-curricular math and music connection, I got an email right back from a math teacher who's like, let's do it. And we'll do the same thing up here, and we'll teach the notes up here, and you can teach the fractions down there. And so I was really excited at their willingness to jump in and be a part of this. We've also used Legos before to build measures and to show length of notes in music. And I got the Legos from one of the 5th grade teachers, and he asked what I was going to do with them. And I showed him my example that the kids were building. And he did the same thing up in his class. They drew the notes on the side and they built their measures using the Lego. So I'm really lucky to work with some great teachers who are willing to jump in and explore some of the same concepts that we're exploring down in our music classes. Because we are writing curriculum for our semester-long courses right now, we're working hand in hand with our team teachers to plan cross-curricular connections for next year and beyond. And I know writing new curriculum is such a task. We have rewritten our curriculum 3 times in the last 5 years because we moved from a 6 to 8 building to a 5 through 8 building. We rearranged our classes. We added some other elements that we decided we wanted to add in, so we had to rewrite some things, and it's a task, but I do think it has been a great experience to continuously reflect on what and how we are teaching and how we can improve upon those connections throughout our building. So it's actually been great in terms, it's been a lot of work, but it's been great in terms of how we're making those connections and thinking and reflecting on how we're teaching and what we're teaching. So music this year has meant a lot less hands-on activities. We usually spend several weeks on things like ukulele, boom whackers, guitars, keyboard, and we play a lot of stuff. And this year we found other activities to kind of fill that void. And admittedly, some really great stuff like body percussion and bucket drumming that we have never done before. We started doing this year, and it's stuff that we're definitely going to keep doing. And it's stuff that the kids are excited about, and they leave and they tell other, their teachers what they're doing in music class. And I know some of our phys ed teachers have talked like, hey, what's that thing you're doing with the body percussion, and what's that thing you're doing with the buckets? And so people notice when you incorporate these new things that the kids leave and talk about, and that news spreads. And it's a great way for things to catch on in other areas of your building as well. So even though it's kind of been a very enviable situation this year with everything going on with COVID-19, adding some of those new things, we're still able to add that excitement of having something new and something fun to do in our classes. So I just kind of kept it short and sweet and just wanted to share a little bit of some of the things we're doing in music. And thank you.
Thank you, Rebecca, for sharing some of those ideas. And particularly, you made a perfect segue talking a little bit about how your phys ed teachers were listening to some of the things they were doing and how they could incorporate that with their classes, which leads us to our next presenter, who is Quinn Matz, a health and physical education teacher from West Hempfield Middle School. Quinn?
All right, thank you for having me today. So many good ideas, and I'm writing them all down as we're going here tonight. One of the things that I really wanted to do was try to teach my curriculum as best as possible with a very short amount of time. As a phys ed and health teacher, our teaching days are very numbered as far as health goes. I might have 20, 40-minute classes to get a health curriculum in. And with that being said, what I've learned is that I can rely on some other teachers in the building to do some of the groundwork for me. And then I can go ahead and just teach the content, and we can get some neat projects together. So I'll talk about that a little bit today. But the main reason I really like collaboration is, like I said, the teachers sometimes have already taught and practiced some skill sets that I can bring into my room And then instead of having to reteach how to give a speech or how to write a project or different skill sets that they need to do a project, they already know it. And I'm just reinforcing it in, excuse me, in my classroom. So it's easier for students. They know what to expect. Students get more practice and they realize that, you know, we're going to use this more than one place and it's something we should value. So that's always good for them to see whatever they're doing in another class and a few other classes and say, hey, you know, okay, this is how we give a speech and this is what our teachers are going to expect. And now we know that this is how we should do it. And so when you're adding in your content to the same basic rubric or skill set, then these kids really do well with it and they have more practice in it. It's also fun to work with other teachers. When we were talking about this, one of the challenges that I'm sure all of you have as middle school teachers is finding that time to talk to the other teachers, collaborate. I know our school with the middle school schedule, when I'm teaching the 6th grade classes, my core teachers are off. And then when I'm having my prep, they're teaching. So it's really hard to find those times to collaborate. So that is a challenge, but where there's a will, there's a way. And it is a fun project to get with your other staff and work together. Students get more accomplished with content. Like I said, I save some time. When I have 20 classes, I can't spend a day or two talking about how to do a speech. So being the fact that they already know that skill set coming in makes it a lot easier for me to get more content covered and not lose that class time. And we, like some of you all have been saying, we really should look for the easy crossover. I mean, sometimes we make things more difficult than it needs to be, and really just look for those tools that we can use in our classroom that other teachers are also using, so students can see the same skill set in different lights. One of the other things that was really helpful this year and last year is just learning what works in a virtual world. I mean, this is a challenging time. And, you know, I would reach out to other teachers in 6th grade and say, hey, you know, I have this student that won't log on. What are you doing? How are you contacting them? We share team notes. So the 6th grade, when they have a team and they're talking about a kid who's not logging on or not doing their work that they need to do, how are they reaching them? What was finding successful? And sometimes, you know, you get on there and you see, oh, they will meet at 2:30 and maybe you can grab that kid at that time. So just collaborating with the other staff on challenges has been really eye-opening this year. Okay, next slide, please. So how you get started, because like I said, I don't do a ton, I don't have a ton of classes to do a lot of collaboration because I also have to teach phys ed. We just talk to other teachers. And like I said, I reuse the rubrics. I have the same directions in a lot of classes as other teachers. When they have a writing prompt, I try to keep it very similar. My requirements are very similar. I've had the teachers come in and help me write questions so that they reflect very similar to what the other teachers are expecting in a writing. I've had teachers, like the art teacher, tell me what she expects in a poster from a student. So that way we're keeping things again similar. And for me, it's really nice because I already have rubrics made. I have the requirements already done. So it actually saves me a lot of work and the kids benefit. So those things you can always look for, and teachers are always more than willing to come and help. So I do have other teachers come into my classroom. I've had them model how they want the writing to look, especially when I was getting really started with this because I was new at it and I want to make sure I was doing it right. So ask them to come in, even if it's for 5 minutes, to explain the assignment, and then you can go from there. One of the best ways that I have worked with other teachers is the computer teacher and I share projects. She's always looking for making a PowerPoint or a pamphlet, and I'm always looking for kids to do something with the content I share. So they will look up body systems, or they will look up how to prevent drug abuse, and then she uses that content in her computer projects. And so at the end, we both get a great project. Next slide, please. Another thing that I do, which is a school-wide collaboration, is I do a mental health week every year. And one of the most important things that we can teach our kids is how important it is to take care of our mental health. And so we do a suicide prevention, mental health awareness week. We have daily announcements, dress up days, guest speakers. Teachers will, if it's a English teacher, they may have an article they talk about or read about in the mental health component. We've had other math teachers talk about statistics with mental health and how often, people are misdiagnosed and not getting the help they need, and how important it is that we get rid of that stigma. The wellness fair that we bring in has been a really neat project because it incorporates a lot of other disciplines. So when I have a wellness fair, I invite people from the community come in, and our librarian called the local library, and they talked about how the kids could get involved with that. The music teacher found local companies that have singing lessons, acting lessons. There's places with open mic night. And these people love to come into the school. It's free publicity. The kids then learn about it. Everybody wins. Another thing we have is, the gyms come in, the local rec center comes in. I have the athletic director come and talk about the sports we offer in the high school, Boy Scouts. And like I said, all of these people are very willing and able and excited to come in because it's free publicity for their companies. And then, like I said, the kids then have connections to community, and they find ways to do things that are healthy, and we promote just all wellness in all different ways. So if anybody's ever interested in putting on one of those together, I would be more than willing to help. One of the guest speakers that we have come in is from NAMI, and that website's down there, but they're really good about coming in. They're free of charge, and they've done a really good job for us with mental health. So those are just some basic ways I do this. Like I said, I don't have a ton of time to share, so I try to find, the most bang for my buck, and this is what I found to be successful.
Those are great, Quinn, and there's some terrific suggestions there as to how you can work with the other teachers and find ways that you can integrate health and phys ed with a lot of the skills that are being taught in those other classes. So some excellent ideas and suggestions. We certainly want to thank everybody who's joined with us this evening. If you've got some questions or comments, please drop them over there in the chat box. Or as we wrap up, you can stay on and we can unmute you and you can ask your questions directly to one of the presenters. But as we bring this to an end, let me turn it over to Bruce Fosberg.
Well, again, I want to thank everyone for attending tonight. We really do appreciate that. And I want to thank our presenters, Rebecca, Renee, Sherry, Rhonda, Josh, and Quinn, for presenting tonight. We really do appreciate that as well. And I also want to have a shout out to Eastern University for sponsoring our webinars and hosting these events for us each month. So thank you to those. This webinar has been recorded. It will be on the PAMLE website within the next day or so. So look for that. The link should be available for any links that anyone had in their programs. That should be available for you. In order to get your Act 48 credit, you'll need to complete the evaluation form, which will be emailed to you. And you should probably be receiving that email sometime later tonight or tomorrow. And you'll have a few days to get that in to get your Act 48 credit. So that's important. Our next webinar is May 12th, and it's going to be a little bit different. We have it's going to be a panel of 6. We have a superintendent, a principal, an assistant principal, a counselor, a beginning teacher, and a veteran teacher, with the topic being, what have we learned from this year? What will we keep and what will be changed? So it's going to be an interesting discussion about, next year, what's going to be happening in September, what we all think is going to be happening in September. So that's really important. And I know Paul mentioned earlier, stay tuned. We're going to be doing this book study this summer on the successful middle school, This We Believe. It'll be posted on our website. We will email all that stuff out to everyone as well. Gail Heinemeyer is going to be one of the leaders of that, who's on the leadership team for AMLE, and they've done a great job, and that should be a great program this summer. So hopefully we'll have an opportunity to do that. And if you haven't purchased that book, I encourage you to do that because it's a great resource for schools. But again, I want to thank you. If anyone has any questions, we're more than happy to stay on and answer any questions that you have. And other than that, thank you. I have a question that I could ask maybe an administrator, in the sense of, how do you schedule time for your Encore teachers to meet with your core teachers? There's a lot of curriculum which is shared, and there's a lot of curriculum out there. What kinds of things do you do to allow these two groups of teachers to connect with one another to learn what's going on in the classrooms? Any of the teachers have any thoughts about that? How you're able to do that within your schools?
I mean, I can speak to what our teachers do in our school. Honestly, they make time before and after school. Our Encore teachers do not line up schedule-wise with with any core teachers other than at lunchtime. So they also have some of those conversations. They have some professional conversations as well as personal conversations during lunchtime, but they really do those type of interactions before and after the school hours. Unfortunately, that's the best we can do schedule wise, but they make it work.
Bruce, I can tell you at our school, all of our exploratory classes, next year will be semester, this year it's quarter, we're on the same team. All of our students are coming from the same team. So like this right now, I'm on the 5th grade team K. So when they have team time, I have team time. Unfortunately, that's usually right after dismissal. We have 20, 30 minutes in a normal year, where we would have that teaming time. This year, because we're coming in earlier due to COVID and we're leaving earlier due to COVID, we don't have as much time to get together. But because, I have the same 5 teachers that I am in communication with, that does make it a little easier, even though we don't have our teaming time this year as we normally would. We do have, I'm not communicating with the whole school, I guess is what I'm saying. I just have that group of teachers because of teaming.
This is Quinn Matz. Sometimes what I do is if I know I have a project coming up, I'll email a teacher and say, hey, when are you available, or when can we get together? And my principal let me switch lunch duties, or maybe activity period. We can both schedule a time off if we can get it approved. So our principal is accommodating with that sometimes, but you have to make that extra step and try to figure out when you can get together. So it depends absolutely on the schedule. Like I said, if I'm teaching 6th grade health and phys ed, the 6th grade teachers are in team meetings, so I will never see them during a normal school day.